When the Prophet ﷺ passed away, Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, were left in a state of extreme grief, worry, and concern about what is going to happen. But at the same time, this gave them a chance to rise and fulfill their responsibilities in the world. At that time, there were also some very young Sahaba. They were just children at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and they also realized that now that he is no longer with us, we better do whatever we possibly can to gain knowledge from those that he has left behind, that he has imparted his knowledge to. So one of the young men who undertook this was Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, who was the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, Abdullah ibn Abbas was close to the Prophet ﷺ. He used to do khidmah, he used to attend to the Prophet ﷺ, because the Prophet ﷺ was married to his khala, his aunt Maymuna radiallahu anha. So he would spend the night there at Maymuna radiallahu anha's house, and when the Prophet ﷺ would sleep there, he would make sure that the water for the wudu of the Prophet ﷺ is ready. So when he gets up in the middle of the night to pray tahajjud, everything is ready for him. So once the Prophet ﷺ came out and saw that everything has been prepared, he asked his family, who has prepared this? They said, oh, Abdullah did it. So the Prophet ﷺ made dua for him. Allahumma faqihhu fi d-din wa allimhu at-ta'wil. Oh Allah, give him the understanding of deen and teach him the meanings of the Quran. Now, after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu took it upon himself to gain as much knowledge as he possibly could from all the senior companions. And the way he would do this was, of course, he would sit in their gatherings, but that wasn't good enough for him. He wanted to absorb everything that was possible. He was like a sponge, just so eager for knowledge. So he would wait outside their house, and they would be at home doing whatever they did. When they would come out to go somewhere or to come to the masjid, then he would get up and ask them whatever he wanted to ask them and take knowledge from them along the way at their convenience. And sometimes, as he narrates himself, he would be sitting there waiting for hours, and the wind would be blowing. He'd be sitting there on the ground outside the house. He'd get covered in dust, and many of these companions, when they would come out and see him sitting there, they would say, you are the cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You are so honorable, so noble. You should have told us, we would have come to you. Tell us what you needed. He said, no. I came to you for knowledge, and this is the law, this is the way of knowledge, that whoever wants it must go to the person who has it. So it is your haqq on me. You have taken knowledge from the Prophet ﷺ. I have not come to you today as his cousin. I have come to you as a seeker of knowledge. People his age used to say, Abdullah, enjoy your life, relax a little bit, take it easy. But he would not give up on this pursuit. He remained persistent until the time came when he became one of the most knowledgeable of all the Sahaba. In fact, Umar radiallahu anhu recognized how intelligent, how clever this boy is. So he used to keep him with him in his council. This is the council that is deciding the affairs of the whole world, essentially. Senior companions, the generals, the leaders. So Abdullah ibn Abbas, although he was growing very quickly, but he was the most junior of them. And some of them had this question that, why does he keep this young man with him? Is this young boy allowed to sit in this gathering, which is at such a high level? So Umar radiallahu anhu felt that they have this question. So he said, one day I'm going to solve this question in their minds. So one day, as he was sitting with his council, he posed a question. He said, I'd like you to tell me what is the tafsir of this surah, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ? And the way the seating arrangement was that Abdullah ibn Abbas was sitting to his right. And so it would have been his turn to speak. He would have been the first person to speak. And Umar radiallahu anhu, paying attention to the adab of the majlis, the etiquettes of the majlis, that I should start from the right side, he said, okay, go ahead, Abdullah. He said, how can I speak when all these elders are here? Look at the adab, the etiquette of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, that no, I find it disrespectful to present my opinion before my elders have spoken. They have the most right. So I would like them to speak first. So all the Sahaba, they gave their opinions, and basically everyone came to the conclusion that this verse is telling us that whenever you see the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you should thank Allah by praising Him, and you should make istighfar for your mistakes. Now that everyone has had their turn, Umar radiallahu anhu turns to Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. He said, so Abdullah, tell me, what have you understood from this? He said, this surah was there to inform the Prophet ﷺ that his time in this life is up now. That's what this surah is. That's the message and the gist of this surah. That the help of Allah has come, people have entered into deen in large numbers, and now it's time for you to turn your attention towards Allah and prepare to meet Him. And Umar radiallahu anhu said, this is exactly what I have also understood from this surah. Then all of these seniors understood that this is no ordinary boy. This is someone who has really applied themselves. And of course, the dua of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, oh Allah, give him the understanding of deen and teach him the meanings of the Quran. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu went on to become the greatest mufassir, the greatest alim who understands the tafsir of the Quran, the exegesis, the meanings, the commentary of the Quran, and everyone used to turn to him for that. So age is not a requisite. Age is not a requisite for acquiring knowledge. Two things are necessary. One is acceptance by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second thing is a great deal of effort and sacrifice, where you have to first let go of yourself and your ego. If he had considered his status, he would have sat around waiting for people to come. But people don't have time to come to you and teach you knowledge. You have to go to knowledge. You have to go to the people of knowledge. So you have to let go of yourself, the ego, the grandeur, the importance, the self-importance, the self-centeredness. There is no room for that in the knowledge of deen. There's no room for it. And we'll talk about that in more detail at another time. So that's the first thing that he did. He let go of that. He humbled himself for the sake of knowledge. He had the dua of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he had his sacrifice. If he had just relied on that dua that I'm going to get the understanding anyways, he might have gotten some understanding, but the ummah would not have benefited from him the way they did. So, get ourselves accepted in the sight of Allah. This is a concept that you should start thinking about. How much acceptance do I have in the sight of Allah? You will only get knowledge, and you will only be able to serve deen to the extent that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts you. So in this beautiful month of Ramadan, while we're making du'as, we should also be making dua that, oh Allah, accept me for the knowledge, for learning the knowledge of your deen, for practicing it, and for conveying it to the whole of mankind. Make this dua every day. You'll be surprised and you'll be shocked. Make this dua today. Tomorrow thousands will be your audience and listening to your message. But if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't accept us, remember, Allah doesn't need us. He can take the work of deen from anyone. So the acceptance is necessary. And the second thing is sacrifice for the sake of acquiring knowledge. Sacrifice, where you're actually exhausting yourself. You're making yourself uncomfortable. You're enduring discomfort for the sake of acquiring the knowledge of deen. Without these two things, you don't really get much from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to also acquire that acceptance and open up the doors of knowledge and enable us to get past our own weaknesses, our laziness, our ego, our own hesitations, and may Allah Azza wa Jal pave the path of deen for us. Wa sallallahu wa sallama wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.